Welcome to the Security Weekly News, episode 139. No longer under control of Daleks at all. We have gotten that all taken care of. It's already the first week of August, and it's Black Hat DEF CON week if you happen to be in Las Vegas. Alas, I am not there, but we do have a lot of coverage of various things that are going on out there this week. So if you can't be there, or you're there and you just want to see what we did or what we had to say about it, we got you covered. Today, NSA, NSO, Microsoft, sonic screwdrivers, regulating cryptocurrency, a mysterious NPM, and more. All this and Jason Wood on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. The complexity of cloud infrastructure means every organization's security challenges are unique. Whether your challenge is threat hunting, policy management, cloud workload protection, or all of the above, Uptycs helps you quickly identify and eliminate observability gaps in your security programs. Uptycs, analytics for the modern attack surface, observability for the modern defender. That's Uptycs, UPTYCS. Check them out at securityweekly.com/Uptycs for a free trial.
And now the news. The National Security Administration, the NSA, issued guidance on wireless best practices for new cadres of teleworkers that everyone is dealing with at this point. I mean, we sent everybody home, and we didn't have a lot of time to plan, so we just sent them home, and when they called back and said, I need to connect to the top secret launch code database, everybody went, Telnet, there's your answer. And that was it. But they did put out a public service PDF, and they issued this about Wi-Fi network threats, as well as talking about Bluetooth and near field, which I hadn't actually, obviously I'm aware of the dangers of those things, but I hadn't really thought about them in terms of end users. But I was building a new computer over the weekend, and I noticed it had Bluetooth, it had other various communications protocols built into it, and I was like, oh, okay, I start to get this now. So the good news is you can use these documents for your users pretty easy because they're really, you don't have to write them. They're written pretty simply. They're pretty straightforward. The not so good news, and I see I'm optimistic, but the info is just basic best practice. But it's free, and someone else put it together, so you don't have to. And we all break these rules, and the teleworkers are really, really bad about this. And they don't know about it. They don't think about it. They don't know about near field issues. They don't know about Bluetooth. So it might be time to reissue some warnings and guidance. I did think it was interesting that they started talking about near field and Bluetooth because I really doubt many people really do perceive these as a threat. I think most people don't think of threats to their tech in their domicile. So they think, well, it's Bluetooth, but it's at home. I don't have to worry about it. There's no way my neighbors would ever do anything to me. 9 vulnerabilities were discovered in, wait for it, pneumatic tube systems. I love pneumatic tube systems. To me, pneumatic tube systems are Victorian, steampunk, the kind of like in the movie Brazil, if you've ever seen that, there's this whole thing, with the pneumatic tubes. I know that New York City had a whole bunch of them. Like they ran all over the city back in the 19th century, and I guess that continued in the 20th century. Maybe some of them are still there. The tubes are probably still there, and there's probably people using them for something, probably to distribute drugs or something like that. But they're there, and I think some of them still work. I've heard that, but the ones we're talking about here are in hospitals. Yep, hospitals. That can't be good, right? Well, it made perfect sense when I read the rest of the story. So when I first started reading it, I was just like blown away by this. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Some antique system from 100 years ago that's run, But the package that they're talking about is called PwnedPiper, and it's found in Swisslog Healthcare's TransLogic PTS system. And this thing's like when I go to the doctor and they ask about exercise, it has all the problems. Like it has hard-coded passwords. It has unencrypted connections. It has firmware updates that are not validated. Remote code execution, we've got it. Come on down. All of this is in the Nexus control panel. And I mean, as I started reading, so I'm sort of leading you through this, I started reading, I was like, wait, a control panel? What is that like? I mean, I was imagining it was some giant brass contraption with steam whistles and clockwork wheels and the doctor using a sonic screwdriver to manipulate a plunger or something. I mean, yeah, but so I kept reading. I'm like, oh, this is sounding not so cool and a lot more modern. But this is a really good idea for a hospital because you have prescriptions. So I asked somebody and they were like, oh yeah, we use those for prescriptions. And I was like, oh, and that person's a pharmacist. And they were like, yeah, I'm a pharmacist. I stay in the basement. I send my prescriptions to the pneumatic tube system. Oh, is it really old? Does it have like brass? They have blood samples, things you can't email. So pneumatic tubes are actually super cool, but they still seem Victorian to me. I was in a bank in Switzerland once where they used them so they didn't have to be exposed to the customers, or I guess they were protected from the customers. Everything went in this pneumatic tube system is really cool. Anyway, the system is in 3,000 hospitals worldwide, and if an attacker were to compromise some of these different vulnerabilities, it could probably bring the hospital to a screeching halt. So here's the exception, though. All this stuff is patched mostly. I think there was one legacy issue that was not patchable. So get patching. I mean, if you have one of these. So get in there, you big furry oaf. I don't care what you smell. I mean, do it. Microsoft issued warnings about a phishing campaign against Office 365 users. Not that that's anything new. But this one is active, and it's trying to bypass filters by using legitimate-looking original. And I'm just going to put this in here because I thought it might be worth noting to you. They are actually making it look like the original sender email address is spoofed, and it has a legitimate-sounding username and a domain, which allows them to get through the filters. And so one of the problems with using filters and telling your users that you have filters and that you have protection in place is they often then say, well, anything else is probably okay. On this particular campaign, the word referral is used in the subject field, and it has different top-level domains. It basically links back to a SharePoint site that says staff reports, bonuses, etc., but it's got two links. One is a redirect, and one is basically like a legitimate sort of link. The two links are in documents that have malformed HTTP headers. One of these sends you to an AppSpot domain, which then has a login page. So you actually have to create an account and log in, and then it sends you to a fake Office 365 login page. The second one actually goes to a pseudo-legitimate SharePoint site. But that login creation on the that other site basically makes it look legitimate to filters, and it prevents the automated detection from figuring out that it's a phishing site, I guess. We talked about NSO last week, so there was a lot of discussion about that, but there was some follow-on stories this week that showed, and so now there was like a second group validating that NSO software, this is the Pegasus software, was used in actually targeting a human rights activist who had been an outspoken supporter of two different princesses who were trying to flee Dubai. This person is also an outspoken opponent of Dubai, so they don't like him very much. The French government, though, confirmed Amnesty International's report that journalists, human rights activists, and others were being actively targeted by the NSO phone hacking tool, Pegasus. So David Hay had been communicating with Princess Latifa bint Mohammed Al Maktoum, the daughter of the leader of Dubai, the sheikh, and she had tried to escape Dubai on a luxury yacht in 2018, but they found out about it somehow, and she got grabbed up by special ops and was returned to Westeros. Dorne. I don't know. Maybe it's Dubai. I don't know. It's someplace like that. The work on Hay's phone was the first identification of a successful Pegasus attack on a United Kingdom phone number, despite what NSO said, which was that UK phones were being blocked from the search. But he did have a 44 number, and they said this was an example, so the French government provided this. Supposedly, according to NSO, U.S. phones are also blocked completely from this. But, plebs and peasants have interfered. Have the plebs and peasants interfered with your plans lately? Did some little brat kill your dragon? Maybe someone slipped something in your son's drink at dinner. Well, has NSO got an offer for you? Anyway, I think the story will probably continue to develop. And sorry, I was finally reading Game of Thrones, so it kind of gets in your head. But I guess the significance of the story is that the French government validated the Amnesty International claim, and I guess that old adage, you can't trust a totalitarian regime, might be true. After all, but despite NSO claims they only sell to the good guys. Well, actually, they don't even say that. They just say they sell to nation states, military, and law enforcement, which would include, the Death Star, the Empire, I don't know, the Night King, you name it. All right. No more Game of Thrones. Well, actually, wait. No, it's all Game of Thrones. I'm sorry. It's still Game of Thrones. The United States has a 2,000-page infrastructure bill that seems to be moving forward now. So it had been stalled for a while. Now it seems to be, moving forward. Then, they probably have to print like 500 copies of this thing, probably more than, so it's like if you want to own the paper concession. But apparently, among other things in this 2,000-page infrastructure bill, which is dedicated toward roads and bridges and all these kind of things, there's a clause that attempts to create surveillance inside blockchain cryptocurrency. Wow. The proposal, which has not been passed as yet by the U.S. Congress and is still apparently being amended, expands the definition of the term broker to include everyone who is, quote, is responsible for and regularly provides any service effectuating transfers of digital assets. I like the word effectuating. I feel like effectuating some peasants today. Hand me my Pegasus console, knave, and await my bidding while I effectuate. It's coming. That's some good effectuating. Yeah. All right. Anyway, this language would pretty much mean that every entity in the cryptocurrency system, regardless of where they are in that chain, would literally be considered a broker in the Internal Revenue Code. And that would include developers, users, pretty much everyone. So if you transfer Bitcoin, you suddenly become a crypto broker. And what that means is that even miners, so even if you just run a mining operation, you could be considered by the Internal Revenue Code a broker. And what that means is that, have you ever gone to a bank? I know some of you haven't and never would. But if you've ever gone to a bank and you try to do a transaction, they need your name, your ID, how much money you're depositing, where it's being deposited to. And if it goes over certain amounts, like I think it's $4,999, because one time I was in a foreign country, I won't name the country, and there was this long line of people standing in front of this building, and they all were holding a little packet in their hands. And I asked somebody what they were doing, and they said, each one of them is transferring $4,999 to the United States. It was some kind of money laundering thing. And they said the FBI doesn't actually pay attention if it's below 5,000. So that's why I was like, you'd think they'd figure this out. But pretty much in this bill, everything would then be required to be collected regarding Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency you want to use. Now, personally, I think this is an old school technique that's being applied in a new school world, which basically means I don't think you could probably ever enforce it because everybody will just be like, haha. And it's going to be like one of those paraphernalia laws they have where like an alligator clip in your soldering box is just an alligator clip in your soldering box unless they catch you with some of that reefer. And then the alligator clip becomes paraphernalia, and you get an extra year in jail for each piece of paraphernalia. And if you think I'm making that up, well, then you're commie scum because it's an actual law. Regardless, this bill would require new surveillance of everyday cryptocurrency users, force developers to implement surveillance systems, etc., and if they don't change the language somehow. So the story was from the Electronic Freedom Foundation, so check them out if you're interested in this, or talk to your representatives about it, really. And all right. When we return, Jason Wood will join us with commentary.
With the skills gap increasing, it's more important than ever to train your staff effectively and efficiently. Offensive Security provides training for your organization designed by the same minds behind Kali Linux. Here are two recent offerings from OffSec. OffSec Academy gives you the chance to earn industry-leading OSCP certification with dedicated one-on-one mentoring. You can also try Proving Grounds Enterprise, created exclusively by Offensive Security's InfoSec experts for highly realistic simulated networks. Visit securityweekly.com/offsec to learn more.
Already famous for his classic teen comedy, Orgy at PS 151, he sat down and immediately wrote another legend, Go-Go Girls Prison Orgy. Variety called him the Orson Welles of orgy movies, and Quentin Tarantino once called him the master of the orgy comedy trope. He is none other than Mr. Jason Wood.
Well, hello everybody. How are y'all doing?
I'm better because I got to say orgy comedy trope.
Yeah,
Bucket list.
Congrats. Oh, so this is kind of interesting. Actually, part of this just Doug's commentary or story about the crypto surveillance provision there. But so we'll get to that in a second. But I have commented on this before a number of times. I find the e-crime ecosystem to be really kind of wild to learn about. Ransomware as a service. We've talked about that a lot. Some of the other platforms out there, access brokers, things like that. Threat Post released this article today, basically pointing to a report that was also released today by Sophos on the Raccoon Stealer platform. Now, Raccoon Stealer is basically an entry-level criminal crime as a service platform, I guess. It allows aspiring thieves to get their feet wet and get started, owning the victims out there and stealing their monies and passwords and all that other good stuff, I guess. I really like the headline by Sophos, though, on their blog post, because it began with Trash Panda as a service. I'm used to using things at work like Wicked Panda, Karma Panda, and Judgment Panda. So I just really appreciate the idea of Trash Panda. Well played, guys. I enjoyed the heck out of that. Now, Sophos, with that, in my vernacular, using Panda, it implies some attribution. That's not what Sophos is doing here. They're just making a play on Raccoon. But it was still kind of interesting. They do mention at one point that one of the sites being used to get access to the platform was Russian language based, but that's about as far as they go. But why did this platform get my attention? I mean, it's an information stealer. It's not necessarily the most sexy thing in the world. It's certainly not the multi-million-dollar ransom that we have heard all about for months and stuff now. But I just thought it was a fun and interesting read to get another bit of insight into maybe an area of criminal activity or e-crime or however you want to phrase this that we don't normally focus on in security. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting. Most of these criminal or crime as a service platforms require some kind of vetting to get access to the tool set. You have to go through and somehow become an approved crook through reputation or what have you. I don't know how you establish your reputation without doing that. But this is kind of the starting point to it here. There's no vetting to get access to the Raccoon platform. They take all applicants. They don't care what your reputation is. Newbies are welcome. About all that they do is apply a signature to each version of the software that they give out. That's, basically that signature is unique to that person who purchased access to it, so that they can determine if somebody's burning them, if things are showing up in virus total or what have you. Sophos described Raccoon as an on-ramp to criminal operations as a service. So I guess you could call this a gateway service. I don't know, kind of a little flashback to my teenage years there. Again, Raccoon isn't very sexy itself. It's just an information stealer. It's focusing on credentials, cookies, files that they can download from the infected host or upload to the affected host. It has some dropper functionality. One thing that was kind of interesting was, and this gets to the cryptocurrency, they have added now functionality to go after cryptocurrency. Basically, they recently added a clipper functionality that allows the attacker to catch and recognize crypto wallets when they're copied to the clipboard on the victim system, and the clipper essentially detects that, modifies it to the attacker's cryptocurrency wallet. So if somebody's making a transaction to transfer some money somewhere, this thing will catch that, change it to the attacker's wallet. The victim initiates the transfer, and boom, the cryptocurrency is headed off to the thief instead, which would be, of course, terribly disappointing to the victim. You know, and they've also added the ability to deploy crypto mining software to the victim systems as well. So not only will we steal your cryptocurrency, but we'll hijack your computer and use it to do mining of cryptocurrency, which sounds kind of interesting. I'd be kind of curious how, what the federal government, U.S. federal government, would make of that situation where, now let's say if this infrastructure bill passes with this language that Doug was talking about in place, how do you report all of this? And I didn't even know I was stolen from. I just was, my computer just started mining. It was kind of weird. Anyhow, one of the things I also thought was fun was how the systems get infected themselves. A lot of times you'll hear about phishing attacks and what have you to get victims to deploy this stuff. Raccoon is doing it by basically getting really good at search engine optimization for wares. If somebody goes out searching for maybe a video editing application that they want to get a cracked version of, then the chances are really good that you're going to see some of the sites that that Raccoon is operating, and therefore the victim downloads the cracked software, and they get a backdoored version of it. It's been modified to include the Raccoon Stealer and is part of this. And, this allows them to, again, get their password stolen. It also does spam comments on YouTube for something like porn sex, which is one that I saw recently, or whatever it is that gets, tossed into various video comments. The installer sounds like a total pain in the neck to do. It's like you get an archive file that contains a text file with a password and protected archive file that you then extract, and then it's got some other self-extracting installer that you have to jump through hoops with and maybe sacrifice a goat to get it to go run. But where seekers are going to be determined, they want to get their video editor, and so they eventually get it installed, and then their system is infected. The write-up by Sophos gets pretty detailed in their analysis of the malware. They get into the HTTP requests that are part of the command and control requests, the infrastructure of the platform as a whole, and how a lot of the functionality operates. Particularly, they spend a fair bit of time on the Clipper functionality, since that is new to the platform and how it is going about snagging cryptocurrency. And then finally, one of the things that I thought that was really interesting about this was the economic side of it. What's the payoff for running this? And Threat Post summarized this a bit, and the report had it in detail. But basically, it's not expensive. This is a cheap platform to get access to. Somebody decides to get into it and buy it. They cost them $75 to buy 7 days of access to the platform itself. Again, no vetting or anything like that. Anybody can dive on as long as you can get to their Tor site and make the various requests. And I assume read Russian. Regardless, the information that they're after is not targeted. This is pretty run-of-the-mill type of stuff. Credentials, there's a market for this stuff, for example. Whether or not that gets sold off or gets used by the Raccoon team for other operations, just kind of depends on what they find to be interesting. This is not a big money operation like we're talking about with Revol or some of these other ransomware gangs where they're demanding millions of dollars. We're talking about thousands of dollars. But in the data that Sophos had access to, they said, at least in one case, one person was able to steal about $13,000 in cryptocurrency from their victims. They were able to mine about $3,000 in cryptocurrency over 6 months. This isn't big money again, but the return was pretty good because over that period of time, they paid $1,200 and some additional fees that were tossed on top of it. Let's call it $1,300 for access to the entire thing. So that's about like 11 grand in your pocket at that point. I don't know how much time the attackers would have been required to put into this, or how they value that. I suppose the attackers' mileage may vary on how good they are and how well they manage their time and automate things. But if you're interested in this sort of thing, go ahead and check out the show notes. I got the link to both the Threat Post article and the Sophos blog post. There's a fair bit to read here, and like I said, I just found the economics of this to be really kind of interesting. You can see why it'd be enticing to somebody getting into this realm of things, this type of criminal operation, because it doesn't cost them a lot of money to get a decent payoff back. So, payoff coming back at you. So go check it out and enjoy the read. Hope you liked as much as I did.
Thank you, Jason. It's like a student edition of that. You can pick this up. Like
maybe there's a difference. Maybe there's a discount if you apply from a .edu address. Maybe
you have to show your student ID, and then they
poor college students. Hey, we'll help.
Well,
them
yeah.
out.
I mean, they can't afford to get into crime. It's too expensive. So
yeah,
we should start a business. All right. And finally, an NPM package. It's JavaScript stuff named simply Dash. And that's an N dash, not an M dash or a 3M dash. And I actually took real typing from Sister Margaret, and she and her magic cane would make sure you did not look at your hands and that you knew the difference in N dashes, M dashes, and all that kind of stuff. But an N dash is just that little like minus sign thing. It has more than 700,000 downloads, and it's currently a dependency in 50 packages. So what? Well, the weird thing is there's nothing in it except some skeleton code, just like default crap. And it's credited to somebody named Dmitry Parchitsky, who was unavailable for comment at the time we went to press. But so why is it there? And why does it have all these? Well, one theory was that people grab it by accident when they're trying to list flags on an NPM pull, and they put a space between the dash and the flag. So if you put dash space flag, then it grabs the flag or the dash as something you want to search for, and then it gets added into whatever you're working on. My paranoia immediately kicked into this was some kind of prequel to a supply chain attack. So they get it out there, they figure out a way to get people to adopt it, embed it, and so forth, and then later they change it and send out an update request. I don't know. I thought it was pretty interesting. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for joining us today on Security Weekly News. I will be back on Friday with the Security Weekly wrap-up show. See you then. Bye.